Remember, I went to go bid a job one time, and I walked in the house, and they were remodeling, and it was right when I first started doing laminate. The first thing I ever did in my trade was carpet, and I did that for a long time. And then when laminate came out, I was a little scared to do it, but then I finally caught on, and I started doing it more and more. And then they started coming out with all these other laminates and LVPs, and I just kind of got with the times and made a lot more money that way too. But when I was young, I was a little scared. I remember going to a job one time, and this is probably about, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago. It's been a long time. I've been in the business 42 years. And I get to this job, and I bid it, I'm looking at it, and all the door jambs were like this. And this right here is just Velcro. I'm gonna show you what that's for in a minute. But basically this was the wall. You have your header, and then this is the jamb itself. So they had the drywall, and then they had taken off all the casing and the jamb itself. So I thought, man, this is gonna be a breeze. I'm just gonna come in and just lay my floor and go, right? So typically what we do on jams like this is we'll get our pieces in. I'm gonna show you right now how I do it. I like to work away from them, but in some cases you gotta work up to them. And on this particular house, there was a lot of doorways, so some of the doorways we had to work up too. So when you get to this point right here, you notch everything out, and then you just click it in, like this. Really easy. And then they put their casings on, and that's up to them, So we just get it as tight as we can, so when they put the casings on, nothing will show, right? So I get back, I go back to the job probably 2 months later, and like I said, I was young, I didn't know a lot, so I'm just assuming one thing, and I get back to the job, and this is what it looks like, right? It's a piece of laminate here. So it looks like this. I'm just doing this as a spacer right here. This piece of laminate underneath. But basically I get there, and that's what I'm looking at, right? They had went in and put all their casings in, and I think I had asked the homeowner what happened. When I came, this was all out, and I was hoping they would leave them out. I just assumed they would, and I might have even said something, like, hey, can I do it afterwards? And of course the contractor just wants to get out of there, so they go in and they just put all their casings in. They don't care about us, and that's pretty much what it looks like right there. So now I get there, and it's like that. So now to do the floor, I have to this piece right here. This isn't going to go in, right? There's no way this is going to go in. So what do? Do I take all that off? No, I have to undercut it. They have a special tool that undercuts it. I think I had a jam saw, a hand jam saw, and then I had a electric jam saw, which was by Crane. It's called an undercut saw. And then later on, they came out with what was called a multi-tool, or an oscillating tool. So there were tools to do it, and once you did it, you would just basically tuck it underneath, like so, like that. And that's your finished look, like that. So beautiful, right? But see, the problem is though, is in the beginning, what I saw And what was in my mind was this open door jamb. So I get there, and the first thing I did was I panicked. And not panicked, but my heart failed, you know. Because now I'm thinking, man, it's going to take me a lot longer than I thought, right? But the reality of it is, what you saw me do by putting the flooring underneath there, it fit, and it fits this way. So the point I'm getting at is, when we see something like this, or we see something with the casing on, you got to look past all that, and you got to look at the bones of it. And the reason I have this name Goliath up here is that, you know, when David, in the story of David and Goliath, David saw Goliath, and he saw him as flesh and blood. He didn't see him with all his armor on, and, you know, instead he had a spear and a javelin, and he had all these, he even had like an armor bearer that went before him, you know, and he was huge. And so what happened was, you know, I went to this job and I saw this, and then I come back and then I see these casings and everything on there. What I saw was, I saw Goliath. And I was like, man, you know, I thought it was going to be so easy, and then now I have to do all this work. You know, if it was my own house, I would have waited till afterwards, or maybe I would have, like, say, if I would have buy a house, I'd take off all the casing, do the laminate, and then put new casing on. But the fact of the matter is this casing was put on there, and I had to deal with it. So David, going back to the story of David and Goliath, you know, when he looked at Goliath, he didn't look at Goliath with all this what do you call it, baseboard and all the casing and the door jamb. He saw Goliath as a man. He saw Goliath naked. You know, it didn't matter if when he got to that point that there was all these obstacles and all this armor. He saw past that, and he went right through it. And a lot of times, you know, we as installers, you know, we get on these jobs and we make a big deal about things, you know, and we find excuses not to do it, or we cut corners, you know, but God wants us to behave wisely. And when I say that, and the reason I say that is because in 1 Samuel 17, you see how David was a shepherd. David came to the battle, and they accused him of being nosy. They're saying, you're just here to, you know, to watch the battle. But David was there to engage. David was there to, you know, he said to Saul, you know, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And he said, I'll go out and fight him. And, you know, it's almost like when when I was coming up in the trade, I like to take on the jobs no one wanted, because it challenged me, and I grew in that. And look at David. David said, I can do it. And Saul tried to give him his armor, and that's the equivalent of today, is like someone trying to give you their tools, to say, do it this way, you know. Here, use this tool, use that tool. But God wants us to behave wisely. I'm going to explain to you what that means in a minute. Because behaving wisely, if you read 1 Samuel chapter 18, and this is after David kind of adopts, or Saul kind of adopts David and brings him into the family. And him and Jonathan have this connection as friends. And, you know, then they go out and they say, Saul kills his thousands, but David kills his 10,000s. And Saul was jealous of him. And David had to behave wisely. In fact, it says it a couple of times that in all those things, that David behaved wisely. You know, Saul wanted to kill him, but David behaved wisely. See, Goliath wanted to kill David, but David behaved wisely. David didn't panic. When he got to the job and he saw all the casings on there, you know, he got there and he saw all this on. And he saw all the armor on. And he saw the javelin and the spear. That's what they saw. That's what Saul saw. That's what all of Saul's men saw. They saw Goliath on steroids. They saw him with an armor bearer before him. Not only was he big, but he had all these other things going on. They saw him like this. But David looked past all that. And David kept working. And David went forward. David did the job, just like as though nothing was there. Because David saw the finished work. And just like us too, there's a finished work in all of us. There's an expected end to everything that we go through. Everything that every battle, every job, every test. David didn't see what others saw. David saw this. And did you know that same cut that I made, that same cut that I made that went under, like that, and covered, is the same cut, whether the baseboard was on or not. It's the same cut. It's the same exact cut. So when we see these door jambs on these jobs like this, we look at the guts of it. We don't have to worry about all that fluff. We just look at the guts of it and we make the same cut as we would if the molding wasn't there. You get to a job, you see something, don't be afraid, just behave wisely. God will give you wisdom if you ask. That's the one thing in the Bible that it tells us that we can ask for, and He will give it to us. Wisdom. When we don't know what to do, and behaving wisely is taking that wisdom and using it, and not panicking, and not making excuses, and not cutting corners. Because that's what we do, and that's how we grow. But if we run from the battle, we're never going to grow. When David approached Goliath, David ran to the battle. And David prevailed because David behaved wisely.